Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. As you know, my name is Mary Baker, and I'm here to give you the education, the tools, and the motivation to identify exactly what's in your way today and what you can do about it. Because remember, empowerment comes from doing, truly identifying what's really going on, what's really causing the issues, and the best part, the positive changes you need to make to increase your self-confidence and take charge. So we've been talking all month about how to say no to others, how to say no to ourselves, and how to detach and sit with reality. On this episode, I want to talk about healthy boundaries in our actual communication with each other. Healthy communication is a really big soapbox of mine and has been because I think it helps determine the emotional honesty and therefore the emotional safety of a relationship. And the emotional safety, I think, determines how we can connect, how we build trust, and work through issues together. This is how trust is built, moment by emotionally honest moment. Now, I know most of you are somewhere on the continuum between really healthy and toxic, as are most of the people around you. My hope is that as you think about this issue, as you listen today, that you can continue to identify maybe why your relationships may feel a bit unsafe and begin to make changes for yourself, both to set healthy limits with yourself, but maybe also tweak some of your own behavior. Oftentimes we first see this stuff in everyone else because it's much safer to do that. And then when we have the courage, we start looking at where we struggle as well. So let's look at what are some unhealthy forms of communication and why I think they're so toxic. The big overarching theme here is that it's not safe to be open and emotionally honest and therefore vulnerable and take a risk in your communication when it is not safe to do so. Now, when you hear this, most people think about the obvious, about someone being verbally abusive, right? Screaming, shaming, name-calling, maybe bullying and threatening. What we talked about 2 episodes ago was about the insidiousness of emotional manipulation because that's not as overt and obvious. That's the whole point. That's why it's so nasty. But then there are other fun passive-aggressive stunts that I want to talk about today. Yes, I'm being snarky. Some of them might be more obvious than others. So the first one is using guilt. Using guilt to get needs met. So what's happening when someone does that is they want you to feel guilty for not doing or something for them or not doing something, rather than them being emotionally honest and putting themselves out there and say, hey, I really need you to do this for me, and this is why. They can't do that, so instead, they're like, I can't believe you're not going to help me. God, I helped you last time. How can you be so selfish? Or, I guess I'm just going to have to do it myself. The big passive-aggressive sigh. What we're doing when we do that stuff is we want to have other people step in and rescue us from having to ask for what we need. We put guilt on them because we came by it honestly, usually. This is usually learned in childhood. Lots of you statements. I mean, I personally think that when you're hearing you statements, someone's being passive-aggressive. They're putting their stuff on you. There's lots of blame. You know, if only you hadn't done that, we'd be fine. And because of you, because of you, because of you. Lots of shaming statements, Tefloning all culpability or responsibility, really putting the onus on others outside of themselves. That's passive-aggressive. That's not assertive. There's the form of backhanded compliments that people can use. We've talked before in previous episodes how they're leaking their stuff out sideways. Their real feelings are being leaked out. They're being leaked out by innuendo. You know, sometimes they'll say something and it feels like it has a double meaning. It doesn't feel clean. If it doesn't feel clean, it's probably not clean. Or in the past, people manipulated you, so you assume everyone's giving you a double meaning. So that's work you can do within yourself. Another fabulous favorite of mine are the mock questions, is what I call them. Because I don't think there's authenticity in these questions. Things like, I don't know why you're so upset. It's not that big of a deal, is an example. Well, you're just too sensitive. Basically, they're trying to twist reality or make you question your own reality and make you feel like crap just for asking for what you need. Or, God forbid, for pointing out their transgressions, for confronting an issue, or setting a boundary. This is when you usually see this behavior. You know, if you're compliant, you won't see it too much. But when you put your foot down, when you point to an obvious issue, when there's a problem, when there is possible conflict, remember the you statements. I'm a firm believer, if you're hearing you better be hearing tons of empathy and mirroring and validation from them. Otherwise, you should not be hearing the word you. They should be telling you about them. I'm pretty hardcore about this. I really think that anything outside of a emotionally honest, valid, vulnerable I statement, that is my vulnerable truth, is manipulation. Anything outside of that. And I think it's kind of what I call the cowardly way out. It's the way out from owning my feelings, owning my choices, owning my bad behaviors, owning my mistakes, owning what I need. So I have to resort to what's called manipulating to get needs met. There's tons of excuses, tons of outsourcing, tons of blaming, divert, distract, deny. Defensiveness is another big one that's pretty obvious. Reactivity, be it someone shuts down or they blow up at you or they get emotional or they become super uber fragile, like you're going to break them, they're going to have a panic attack or pretend to have a heart attack or that you're going to put some awful situation on them physically. Talk about guilt. And the ultimate is that they're going to threaten to hurt themselves, which I think is extremely, extremely abusive. Not okay. But defensiveness, like I've talked about before, shuts down the dialogue. It essentially says, no, we're not talking about this. I'm not going to take responsibility. I'm not even going to be able to hear you and show healthy boundaries that I have to accept that's where you are. I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to think you're not crazy. But if I'm non-defensive, I respect that is about you. So that's where we talk about boundaries in communication, and you'll see lots of examples of healthy boundaries versus lack thereof in our communication. Remember, people who really struggle to detach and stay on their side of the street and let you have your feelings and not try to talk you out of them or guilt you out of them or blame you out of them have a hard time being in the moment. What you can pretty much guess about that person is that they've had some really bad experiences being in the moment. Usually when they were younger, because when we're kids, we're the most vulnerable. That's our first exposure to the moment with someone. They had to learn how to survive. And again, survival skills are anything but connecting and validating and honest and open. They're anything but vulnerable. It's a prison that they're living in. They're not happy. They're not peaceful. They're not grounded. Okay, so I want to give some examples of some unhealthy behaviors, knowing full well I'm not going to be able to hit all of them here, but I think it'll give you a really good sense of what some unhealthy behaviors are. And as you listen to these, I just want you to kind of think about people around you, think about your relationships, and think about yourself. And don't be hard on yourself if you resonate with some of these here. There are valid reasons why you may struggle with some of these. So the first one that I think most of us are familiar with is walking on eggshells. It doesn't feel safe because you're worried about someone else's reaction, of their treatment of you, of what they're going to do with vulnerable information. If you say, hey, this isn't working for me, or I'm really upset with you, or you really hurt my feelings, or I need something different. We will tend to filter or hold back our truth or try to manage their emotions, which then turns you into a manipulator just as well. So that's something to keep in mind. It sounds controversial, but I think eventually we end up being the ones to put the eggshells on the floor or sweep them away and say, whatever, their reaction's their reaction. I don't want to allow that to dictate how I'm going to behave. So the next one I mentioned earlier, innuendo. So in other words, the messages about what they're really feeling, what they're really saying are mixed. It's not very clear what they're really trying to say. There might be some mixed messages in there. Even the way someone says a certain sentence can really impact how it's received. A lot of times people are vague. They don't nail it down. So you're left with anxiety, wondering what the hell they really mean. There might be body language that is disconnected from what they're trying to say. They avoid eye contact. All those things. It's a drive-by, right? It's not, hey, I need to sit down with you. I need to tell you something. This might be difficult to hear. It really hurt my feelings when you did that last night. I mean, that is the way it's supposed to be. So the third one is pretty obvious. It's called being attacked. So if I am vulnerable by sharing something or confronting reality, so I'm talked out of my reality, that's not true, that never happened, you're full of crap, you make stuff up, you just want to give me shit, you just want to fight with me, you just want to blame me for everything, all the ways they can be passive-aggressive and manipulate. The other way you can be attacked is by someone's overreaction, disproportionate anger to what is going on. That doesn't feel safe. Fourth one is being cold, withdrawing love, being self-protecting. Silent treatment comes to mind. There might be a surface connection, but there's not soul-to-soul understanding. They're not matching their insides with their outsides. They're not telling you what's really going on. Now again, this may not be something that has anything to do with you, perhaps. Maybe they're upset about something else or they're struggling, but they're not telling you what that is. So it doesn't make it feel safe because most people say, I feel like it's me. I feel like they're upset with me, but I don't know that. One of the hallmarks of a healthier relationship is people know what's going on. They don't have to guess. Blurred boundaries are a big one. That's where they focus on your thoughts, your feelings, your choices, and give you the message, of course, of judgment. They're all up in your grill telling you about you. Conversely, this can also look like they make you feel responsible for their feelings. They teach you with rage, don't you dare confront me. You gently confront them about something in the most loving way possible, and they curl up in a ball for 3 days and they can't function. And then you feel guilty. There's a prime example of blurred boundaries. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know darn well by now that is just so not true. That is not your stuff. Unfortunately, that's their struggle. They couldn't handle being confronted with reality. Sarcasm is a big one. You've heard me talk about that before. It's a socially acceptable form of anger. It's when someone really struggles to be vulnerable and say, damn it, I'm mad. That's not okay. I'm hurt. I'm pissed. I'm frustrated. I'm annoyed. All of those valid feelings, they can't speak them vulnerably, or it doesn't feel safe with the people around them, so it's got to come out, right? So it comes out as sarcasm. You get your anger and your hurt out in a very passive way, keeping everybody at arm's length, not owning your truth, but then protecting yourself from being hurt as well. And that's why we do that. If you struggle with sarcasm, my encouragement is, after that comes out of your mouth, you're like, okay, what's really going on with me? What am I angry about? Why does that make sense? Let me go back to that person and apologize, number one, and then say, hey, I'm really sorry. I'm being really snarky. I think I'm just really hurt and angry about X. Just even noticing that you feel what you feel even before you can express it is so much better. That's half of the work is in your own head and your own heart. Deflection is a big one in unhealthy communication. That's someone who's very rigid, they're inflexible. Being right is most important. So at the dinner table, if you bring up a differing opinion, they can't handle that because the fuzzy math that they're using is if they're not right, they're not okay. I mean, that's like a really fragile ego, right? Where if they don't have the right answer, they're not okay. So they have to be rigid. They got to stick to what they think they know. And if they're open, if they realize and recognize out loud that, maybe they were wrong, or maybe they didn't have all the angles on the situation, maybe you had another one to offer, they can't tell you that because they have to be right. And they hold on to that for dear life for identity, and it's actually very sad. I watch as people get healthier and heal a lot of the childhood stuff, because that comes from their childhood, that they become more humble and open, and they're not freaked out. They're like, I don't have to have all the answers. Yeehaw. I don't. I can be teachable. I can learn. It doesn't say anything about me as a person, about my worth. It actually shows that I can be a learner, and I can expand, and I can grow. So a lot of times if you bring stuff up, they won't own it. They'll just Teflon it back to you. They'll blame. This is where it ties into total victim stance, right? It's everyone else's fault. They always have a viable excuse. Well, I couldn't because. As opposed to, no excuse. I didn't do it. Or I blew it. Or yeah, I did that. I did that to hurt you. They often act like, well, I had to. I didn't have a choice, when actually they really did. They're just not ready to own their choices. So here's a small sampling of some unhealthy communication behaviors. Basically, if you think about it, anything that's outsourced onto other people, anything that is vague or innuendo, anything that's guilting or manipulative is unhealthy. It rarely feels safe when someone is acting that way. It doesn't even feel safe for them. That's what's so sad. They don't get to connect. You can't connect unless you're vulnerable and emotionally honest. That's what we connect with each other on, because we connect with each other's humanity. We can't if we're not open. And that's why boundaries matter so much in communication. You stay on your side of the street. You have your thoughts and feelings and choices, behaviors. I respect that those are yours. I have mine. There's no question around who owns what. We get real clear about that. Everyone's choosing. It's open. People can talk. And they can talk about difficult, vulnerable things. And people can handle that, even when it's hard. They don't act out. They don't shut down. They don't manipulate. They don't change the subject because they can't handle it. They don't distract. They don't get up from the table pretending they have something urgent that they have to do in the middle of you pouring your heart out. They don't not acknowledge what you just said. There's a famous one. They validate. It's safe. They let you know you can have your feelings, your thoughts, and your fears, and your needs. It's emotionally honest. It's vulnerable. It's real. It's I statements. It's not about anyone else. It's about each of you owning it. It's statements like, I can't put that on them. I'm really struggling with this. Or even though I'm pissed at him, I think I'm madder at myself because. Or vulnerable statements like, this is really hard to tell you this, but I think I need to. Or I want to, because I don't want this to sit between the two of us. Or I don't want to carry resentment. Or I'd like us to sort through this and solve the problem. Healthy communication is about it, not about the other person. It's about the solution. What would I like to have with them? Healthy communication is congruent. I talk to clients a lot about this. It's congruent. When someone brings something up to them, it makes sense given the circumstances. It ain't out of left field. When you get those out of left field statements, I really want you to put your antenna up and step back and say, whoa, what's going on here? Healthy people don't want to kick you off guard. They have no desire to be provocative and powerful in that way. That's a power grab. Healthy boundaries in communication, each person owns what belongs to them. And they don't put their stuff on you, and they don't take on your stuff. Another example, it's going to sound gender specific, and I apologize, but it's the way we have socialized, especially men in our culture, is if she's upset, he can't handle it because he makes it about him, like he can't keep her happy. Because society told me he has to make her happy, which is so not true. Not true. And so she can't have her feelings because he gets all defensive and makes them about him. That is so, so invalidating. If someone is sharing their feelings, just let them have their feelings. Notice how on the inside of you, you're uncomfortable. Okay, you can even say that. You can even say, this is really hard to hear. But you getting angry and saying, well, I don't know what you want me to do, or I don't know how to fix this for you, or I'm doing the best I can, damn it. It's so hurtful. It alienates them. You're telling them, don't come to me, and certainly don't share your feelings because it's not safe. Now, the other thing I want to talk about in terms of healthier communication is warmth. You know, this is how we tell someone something. It's conveyed through our words, our tone, our body language, maybe special words or phrases that two people share, like, hey, you know, or hey, sweetheart, something like that, so that you can go into it softly, even if you have something really important to say, that you're giving them the vibe, I still love you, you're still good people, we're going to be okay, but I got to bring you this. Healthy communication, for the most part, is affirming. It's positive, or at least neutral, if nothing else. Each of you can walk away from the conversation feeling either uplifted or challenged or at least content and peaceful. You know, there's not a whole lot of anxiety. There's humility. Both people can be open to constructive suggestions of not needing to have all the answers or to be right or to have to fix each other. They're open to learning from other people and learning about themselves, even if it's difficult. They're open to entertaining another view. They yearn for that. And finally, healthy communication is assertive. So, there's aggressive. There's passive-aggressive. There's assertive. What I tell people, better is not being a doormat, not being a jackass, but being healthy and assertive. It's in the middle. Assertiveness is, I am emotionally honest with you. I stay on my side of the street. I let you know where I am. Healthy boundaries are, we just let people know where we are. The ball goes to them. They can do whatever they want to do with that. Hopefully they accept where I am, and then they do the same in return. We don't set boundaries, quote unquote, on other people. I think that that's where people mess it up in the beginning, and that's okay. They're still being controlling while trying to set boundaries. You can't do that to me. Healthier is, I can't stop you from doing that, but if you choose to continue doing that, guess what I'm going to do? I'm out of here. I won't deal with this. We let people know what our choices are. We talked about that in a previous episode around detachment and grieving. I think it's really helpful to give the other person the positive opposite of what is making you nuts. Give them a chance to succeed, a chance to thrive, a chance to do it over, a chance to get it right, a chance to be okay. I think we all want to feel that way. And the research shows that, with the exception of a few people who can't do this, the rest of us, if the boss comes up to you and says, look, I know you're going to knock this out of the park. You're going to do such a good job. I can really count on you. What are you going to do? You're going to scramble to meet that bar because boss believed in you. And you want to believe in yourself, and you want to have their appropriate approval, and you want that healthy mirroring, and you want to do well. Again, unless you have sociopathic tendencies or you're very, very, very depressed and you can't function, you're going to appreciate the positive opposite. So what does this look like? What it looks like is, imagine a coin, and on the top of the coin is the caca that you can't stand. It's the negative behavior. It's the lack of them doing something that you wish they would do. It's all that negative stuff. Flip the coin. What's the positive opposite of that stuff? That's what you want to ask for. And in fact, if you look at it, it's probably like a pretty valid need. I mean, again, I don't think people get out of bed making up stupid needs in the morning. We don't have time for that. Usually we're upset for good reason. So if someone is late all the time, you could shame them and be really unhealthy and say, I can't believe you're late all the time. You're ruining everything for me. Oh boy, you got manipulation and guilt in there, and shame and blame. My. The positive opposite of that is, hey, I just need you to be on time. That would just be wonderful. Be so great. We can get places on time. I can relax. I can count on you. I can trust you. So giving them the positive opposite. Phrases like, I love it when you're on time. I love it when you get the dishes done and I don't have to ask you. I love that we can do this. I love that we can put our heads together and solve problems. Instead of, I can't believe you won't sit down with me and talk about stuff. Instead of, why can't you get the dishes done? It takes a lot of the shaming meta message, the unspoken message, out of what you're trying to say. I think we lash out like that because we want to keep them at arm's length. So we do that you statement. So this comes from the fear of, if I ask you for what I need, the positive need, you'll blow me off, you'll ridicule me, withdraw love, abandon me, so on and so forth. So practicing giving the positive opposite. If you haven't already, I would encourage you to look at episodes 6, 7, and 8, learning about healthy needs, so that can help you have an easier time of identifying, okay, what's the positive opposite and what's the valid need? For an example, you're always gone is code for I miss you. I miss you. I need you. I need your partnership. I need your friendship. I need to be able to count on you. I really want to be able to trust you. I want to feel closer to you. These are wonderful things that the more you walk through this process, you realize we all need the same stuff. It ain't very different. So when I talk about boundaries in communication, the way I kind of look at it is each person is always choosing at every moment. Choice is a big deal for me, as those who've listened to me for a while know. Choice is freedom. Choice is ownership. Choice is personal responsibility. Choice is empowerment. Choice is everything. Anything outside of two people choosing is a hostage-taking scenario. So detaching from other people's choices is how you work on healthy boundaries in a relationship. Get pen and paper out. Do the who owns what. Put down 2 columns. Does that belong to me? Does that belong to them? Why? Why not? Talk it through with someone healthy if you're not sure. Get really acclimated to doing that. And then focus solely on your choices. Peel off all their stuff that is not your business. After you sort out who owns what, it's not your business. Then you're like, okay, what are my choices here? That is the only thing I have healthy control over. Healthy boundaries in communication gets rid of all the control stuff. Everything I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, the manipulation, the guilting, the blurred boundaries, that's all control. Detaching from someone's choices is all about letting go of the outcome. That is complete surrender. That's hard. That's hard. I had a client tell me this morning, but wait a minute, I feel bad. I feel bad that they're upset because they grew up being taught, look what you've done. Now your mother's upset. They were taught to take responsibility for other people's feelings. So there's a lot of unlearning for that poor client to do, but it can be done. It just takes practice, and it takes work, and it takes reminding yourself of what is healthy and what isn't. As you can see, if it's really clear for both parties around who owns what, imagine how the anxiety comes down from there. It's a lot safer. You know what belongs to you. And I just also want to bring up something too. It's actually considered abusive to walk in a room, and if on average your loved ones don't really know what to expect, it's not okay. I mean, outside of the bad day, I've mentioned this before. It's like, we want to not do drive-bys on each other. And I'm a big believer, when I talked about this in the needs episodes, is own what's going on for you. If you walk in a room and you haven't seen your partner all day, and you've had a really bad day, and they don't know that yet, and you just can't be anything different than be a mess, just tell them, say, look, no, you're not crazy. I'm sorry I'm being short or snippy or kind of sullen. I'm just really struggling here. And then we also need to tell them what we're going to do to figure it out. You need to take responsibility, right? We don't want to leak that onto other people, become the vortex that sucks them in. I'm going to go lay down. I'm going to go make a phone call. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to journal. I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to do something. You need to let each other know that we're responsible. And that includes what you need from them. Maybe you just need some support. Maybe you need to cry on their shoulder. Maybe you just need to have them listen. Tell them that. Sweep the eggshells off the floor, and as much as you can, keep them off the floor. Okay, so I want to do an exercise so that you can do a little deeper work around this. And for those of you who are familiar, you know how this rolls. If not, I'm going to read some sentence stems or sentence starters, and I want you to very quickly come up with 4 to 6 really quick endings. I don't want you to think about it. It's not PC. Just trust whatever comes. Normal is there's some good stuff that comes up, some bad stuff, and maybe some neutral. This is just to raise your awareness. If you're walking or you're driving or you're jogging or what have you, just whatever comes up in your mind, and you can write them down later. Okay, I'm going to read these, and I'm going to give you some time to answer. And again, just trust whatever comes. Okay, you ready? Number 1, if I were to be more emotionally honest in my communication. If I were to be more emotionally honest in my communication. Number 2, growing up, my family communicated. Growing up, my family communicated. Number 3, if I were to become more aware of how others talk to me. If I were to become more aware of how others talk to me. And number 4, if I were to notice who I feel emotionally safe with and who I don't. If I were to notice who I feel emotionally safe with and who I don't. Okay, so look over or think about what came up for you. What do you think? Are you surprised by your answers? What awareness does it raise for you? I encourage folks to do these questions every day for a week and just see whatever comes. You might have some repetitive stuff, but you might have some new things pop up too. You know, as we open awareness, we open more awareness. Be sure to check out the bonus downloads in the show notes at ownitpowercast.com. If you're a tribe member, you already got that in your newsletter today, so that should be there in a PDF form, and you can use that. I have some clients who like to take one of their answers to these things and have that be their focus for the month. Like, I'm just going to work on this for the truth that came up around this answer. And I think that can be really powerful and a lot less overwhelming. If you ran into a lot of stuff that maybe even you struggle with, don't hyperventilate. Just pick one thing that you think is the most egregious or the one you'd like to solve first and just start there. Just start there. The rest of it will come. It'll show up as it needs to. So today we talked about healthy boundaries in communication, how to stay on your side of the street, how to detach from other people's caca, what is healthy communication versus unhealthy communication. I certainly could do this all day. We wouldn't cover all of it. So this is just a high-level conversation about healthy communication. But I think everything gets communicated via our words and behaviors. And that's why I think it's so important. That's how we show people how we have healthy boundaries or not, how we have trust with them or not, how safe it is to connect with them or not. And I just think it's one of those things where we're not going to be perfect, but we can always wake up every morning and aspire to do better. And we can march our butts back in the room and say, I am so sorry I got defensive with you. I'm just really struggling. Or you didn't deserve that. Or you're right. It was hard. It was hard to own that with you. But you're right. I know I do that. I know I struggle with it. I hate it. Just keep owning it. At least own it with yourself privately. Own it with a safe other person. If you can't go directly to the horse just yet, that's okay. We start with safe and we get to harder and harder. So thank you for joining me today on this very courageous topic. I hope you walked away with some things that you can use. And if you think others can benefit from this information, I'm asking you guys to please pass this along. We could also use some more positive reviews in iTunes and Google Play or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. That would be great. And if you're a subscriber, if you haven't, sign up for the Tribe News so you get something once a week. You get everything that you need. I don't bombard your email. You get that one thing a week. So keep doing the work. Keep paying it forward. Keep the focus on you. And I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now so you can really own it later.